Good morning, students. Today we are going to discuss about a chapter matter in our surroundings. First chemistry chapter of class 9. In this chapter we will be discussing about the definition of matter and the classification of matter and its properties. First, what is matter? Matter is anything which occupies space and mass. Anything which occupies mass and space is referred as matter. So the classification of matter. Early Indian philosophers classified the matter into five forms, into five basic elements such as air, earth, fire, sky, and water. And these were called Panchatattva. So on the basis of physical state of matter, matter is classified into three: solids, liquids, and gases. On the basis of chemical composition, matter is classified into two. They are pure substance and mixtures. Let us see the physical nature of matter. See, what are the characteristics of particles of matter? We know that matter is made up of particles. Matter is made up of particles. What are the characteristics of particles of matter? The first one, particles of matter are very tiny. Second, the particles of matter have space between them. The particles of matter are continuously moving. And fifth one, the particles of matter attract each other. All these are the characteristics of particles of matter. See, first one, particles of matter are very tiny. How can we prove it? By doing a simple activity. So for this, we have to dissolve 2-3 crystals of potassium permanganate in 100 ml of water in a beaker. First, take a beaker and add 2-3 crystals of potassium permanganate. Add 100 ml of water. Then mix it well. After this, take 10 ml of this solution and add to another 100 ml of water in another beaker. So you can see that the copper sulfate crystals get dissolved in water. Next, take again 10 ml of this solution and dissolve in 100 ml of water in another beaker. So repeat this process about 5 to 6 times. What you can observe? You can see that after dilution, we have did many dilutions. After dilution, still the solution is colorful. This means that few crystals of potassium permanganate can colorize a large volume of water because there are millions of tiny particles in each crystal. So this activity proves that the particles of matter are very tiny. Second property, the particles of matter have space between them. Particles of matter have space between them. How can you prove it? By doing an activity. Take some water in a beaker, note its level. So dissolve some salt or sugar with the help of a glass rod. You can see the salt dissolves in water. But the level of water does not change. The level remains same. What is the reason? Because these particles of salt get into the space between the particles of water. Because the particles of salt get into the space between the particles of water. By this activity, we can prove that particles of matter have space between them. That is why the salt particles get into the space between the particles of water. So the next characteristics of particles of matter, they are continuously moving. Particles of matter are continuously moving. So this also can be proved by an activity. What is the activity? Take some water in a beaker, put a drop of blue or red ink or any kind of ink along the sides of beaker. Leave it undisturbed for few hours. The ink spread evenly through the water due to the movement of particles of water and ink. You can see that the ink evenly get distributed through the water. So this is a process of intermixing of ink particles and water molecules. So this type of intermixing of two or more different types of matter on their own is called diffusion. So what is diffusion? The intermixing of two or more different types of matter on their own is called diffusion. So we discussed about three characteristics of particles of matter. First one, particles of matter are very tiny. Particles of matter have space between them. Particles of matter are continuously moving. Next, the particles of matter attract each other. The particles of matter attract each other. So for this, we have to take different kinds of materials. For example, we are taking iron nail, a piece of chalk, and a rubber band. So try to break them by hammering or cutting or stretching. So it is more easier to break a chalk, but less easier to break a rubber band, and very difficult to break the iron nail. What is the reason for this? This is because the particles of iron nail are held together with a great force of attraction than in rubber band or chalk. So in chalk, the particles of matter attract with less force, but in the case of iron nail, the particles get attracted by strong bond. So in chalk, the bond is weaker, but in an iron nail, the bond is strong between the particles. So on this basis of these physical characteristics of particles of matter is classified into three different states. The first one is known as solid state, second liquid state, and third one is gaseous state. So let us discuss the properties of solids. What are the properties of solids? Solids have definite shape and fixed volume. All solids have definite shape and fixed volume. So we can give many examples for the solids. Chair, table. There are different examples for solids. You know that. Here, what are the properties of solids? They have definite shape and fixed volume. So iron nail and chalk, they are solid because they possess definite shape and fixed volume. Then second property, the space between the particle is minimum. So in solid state, the particles are arranged very closely. That is why the space between them is very minimum. Next, the force of attraction between the particles is maximum. In solid state, you can see the particles are closely arranged. What is the reason for this? Because the force between the particles are maximum. The movement of the particles is minimum. So the space between the particle is minimum, but the force is maximum. And the movement of the particle is also minimum. So in solid state, the particles cannot move freely since they are attracted by strong intermolecular force. This attractive force is known as intermolecular force. Solid states, they are very least compressible. We cannot compress the solid materials. and their rate of diffusion is least. These are the properties of solid state. First one, they possess definite shape and fixed volume. The space between the particle is minimum, and the force of attraction between the particle is maximum. This force is known as intermolecular force. The movement of particle is minimum. They are least compressible. Their rate of diffusion is least. Second state of matter is liquid. What are the characteristics, what are the properties of liquid state? Liquids have no definite shape but have a fixed volume. So what is the shape of liquid? Liquid take the shape of container. In which container we take, the shape of liquid will be same as that of. So if you take some water in a glass, the shape of that liquid will be the shape of that glass. The space between the particles is intermediate. You can see the particle arrangement in the picture. You can see the particle arrangement in liquid state. There's a little space between the particles. The force of attraction between the particles is also intermediate. It is not so strong as solids. Intermolecular force is not so strong as solids. It is intermediate. The movement of particles is intermediate. The particles of liquids can move. That is why liquids and gases are termed as fluids. They are able to flow because the bond is not so strong. They are less compressible. In solids, they are least compressible, but in the case of liquids, they are less compressible. It can be compressed to a little extent, and the rate of diffusion is more than solids. The diffusion of liquids are more than solids. The next state of matter it is gaseous state. In gases do not have a definite shape or fixed volume. So gases do not possess a definite shape or volume. Gases occupy whole space of the container. So the space between the particles is maximum. So intermolecular space, this space is known as intermolecular space, is maximum in case of gases. The force of attraction, as a result, the force of attraction between the particles is minimum. So intermolecular force is minimum, but intermolecular space is maximum in case of gaseous state. They are most compressible state of matter. So gases can be compressed to a great extent by applying pressure. How can we compress a gas? By applying pressure. So the rate of diffusion is more than solids and liquids. The rate of diffusion is more than solids and liquids. Here we have a diagrammatic representation of different state of matter: gaseous state, liquid state, and solid state. See, in gaseous state, intermolecular space is maximum, while in solid state it is minimum. You can see